Okay, welcome everyone to the Appy Hour. We're going to have a deep dive into workflows. Not exactly what you think. And Corpay is here with us. And so we have a special guest, Eric, and we'll be able to, learn some things along the way. So our deep dives are always interesting because this is where we spend more time in the solution and really getting to know, in this case, some of the workflows. So that's all that I'm going to tell you as far as a teaser. Heather, you want to introduce yourself?
Yes. So I've been having that moving title this year, but my name is Heather Satterley, and I am now the Director of Education and Media at Woodard Company. So really excited to make that announcement. I'm actually I think today is officially my first day, but it's actually technically my second day because I worked yesterday. And nice. I'm really excited to be there. I am elated to be spending all of my time now focusing on you guys, on helping, my fellow accounting professionals and my app developer friends, helping you to spread your message and really help to educate our industry. So I'm over the moon and really, really excited. So
we are excited for you, and this community loves you, and I know that you love it. So I'm excited for you. Good things to come.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I want to make sure that our good friend Eric is also introduced. So do you want to take a minute, Eric, and introduce yourself as well?
Yeah. Thanks for that, Heather. So my name is Eric Harris Poindexter. I'm an advisor manager here at Corpay One. So I've now been here for about a year and a half. I've been kind of in the accounting tech space overall for about 4 or 5 years now. But yeah, my role here at Corpay One is to basically work with our accountants and bookkeepers day in, day out to onboard, but ultimately help them implement and scale Corpay One as a solution across their firm and across their client base here.
Well, we are absolutely excited to be with you. And Eric, you and I have worked together quite a bit, both at Satterley Accounting Services and then also at Growth Lab. Yep. So super excited to have you here. And I can't wait for you to share all this magic, this Corpay workflow magic with all of our friends.
Yeah, no, I'm excited as well. And I was just talking with my colleague, Emma, who's in the chat here with us as well. And we were just excited to get on and be able to kind of be a part of this, right? Because we've watched it before. We've seen you guys recording the episodes on the side at the conferences, and kind of envied it that we were never there. So excited to get my kind of spot here on the show and try to make the most of it.
Oh, you're muted, Liz.
Yeah. I'm excited for everybody to get to know you as well, because you're a pretty cool guy.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, there we go.
So I'm going to go ahead and say thank you to our Champagne level sponsor, Ignition. So because of Ignition sponsorship throughout the year, we're able to bring free content to everyone. So you're able to digest and listen to the apps that come on and be able to go and watch at YouTube anytime that you want to revisit an episode and learn more. So we also want to say thank you to Corpay for bringing this episode to us.
Absolutely.
So I think that this is a cool place to begin our topic, because workflow is such a broad term that, Heather, when you think of workflow, what do you think it means, or what does it mean to you?
So I'm going to state the obvious. I'm going to put on Captain Obvious hat, and I'm going to say it's the flow of the work, right? So it's the work that we do, and the flow is really actually how that work is getting done. And when we're talking about automated workflow, we're talking about letting the super awesome magic wands and machines behind the technology to actually complete some of those tasks that build out the flow of the work, or the workflow, as you would say.
I love your Captain Obvious hat. You even put it on.
Right.
Well, so, I think of the people and the process.
Yeah. Totally.
So when I'm thinking about workflow, I want to understand both. So the people that are involved are the ones who are typically doing or have some type of hands-on or some type of input. And then the process, sometimes it can be shifted, sometimes it can be changed, sometimes it just is what it is, and you have to understand where to put the people into that process and the order.
I mean, really, absolutely. I mean, I was just talking today with some accountants who were talking about, workflow is really like the who, the what, the when, and the why are we doing it, right? To complete a task, a task.
Yeah, that's great. Eric, you hear about workflow all the time. Do you feel like also there's more elements to it, or have some additional thoughts here?
Somewhat similar to what Heather said. I think the biggest thing that comes to mind for me is just process initially. Overall, it's just overall process and determining how things will work. I think with Corpay One in particular, I've kind of made workflows synonymous with automation, even though they don't necessarily always go that way. But here with Corpay One, building out our workflows and creating that process, you're also building out a automated process to do that in the way that our workflows actually work here.
I love that you said that, because that is a great lead into designing the workflow. So what you were just talking about with automation, you can't pull in the automation unless you understand the process.
Yeah.
And so there's definitely an order to things. So, for me, everybody kind of has to begin where they kind of digest best. But for me, I always start with the people. I want to know, what are the people doing? Because they usually uncover the process, and they share those little golden nuggets. But then the part where you start to design the automation, that's whenever things get really cool and interesting.
Absolutely. I mean, when you're looking at a process, the people know what they're doing, right? They know what they're doing, and they know but they don't always know why they're doing it. And so when I'm looking at a process or a workflow, meeting with the people, like you said, Liz, is so key, because a lot of processes that, especially in the accounts payable process, right, Eric, is so antiquated, and they've been doing it the same way for possibly 30, 40 years.
Yep.
And so talking to, the team that's actually putting it together at every step of that process, and kind of digging into where they're repeating the same steps.
Exactly.
Where are they adding steps that don't necessarily even need to be there? That is really kind of understanding what's happening in the current state is going to uncover all the little nuggets, and it's going to lead you to the path of the future automated state. So 100% Liz.
Well, and I'm looking over at chat right now. George said workflow equals 1,000 lists.
Yes.
And that's the piece that we're trying to remove, and we have to uncover it. So it's funny, because we actually start with Post-it notes. And I think that, I got that from a Scaling New Heights conference. We were inside of one of the classes and began the session with Post-it notes. And I was like, yes, this is a tool that everybody has. And then we started like writing on it, what was the process? And that's one of those step-by-steps that I still use, because the Post-it note is actually the best tool for being able to say, oh, we forgot a step. Pull it back, put it down a little bit lower. And then, you kind of do that until you end up finding all of the steps. And if you see right here in little bitty letters, that's kind of light, it says sometimes the simple is overlooked. Those are the things that everybody takes for granted.
You're right. And I think, I think the most important thing when you are designing a workflow and evaluating it is understanding what is the end goal. Exactly. What is it that you're trying to achieve? Because it's really easy to get caught up in all of the different pieces of the workflow and miss the big picture, which is, what are we trying to accomplish here? Are we trying to save time? Are we trying to save money? Are we trying to save paper? What are the things that we're trying to do? And usually it's all of those things. but it's, trying to make the complex simple, Liz. Absolutely. And if you're not focused on what the process is and what the end goal is, you're right. Things can be overlooked and then you end up making it more complicated than it needs to be.
And Heather, this has been one of those conversations that we've had before, that when an app goes wrong in an implementation, it's typically because you're fighting the workflow. So usually a solution has a workflow built in. And when you understand that workflow is whenever it's easier to go, oh, this fits for me. This is like how we process. Or to be able to say, there's lots of different workflow options here. I need to identify what's the best fit for our scenario.
Definitely. And of course, you definitely want to start with what you're doing now, but you also want to keep an open mind. And I think that when you're truly in an innovative state, you have that open mind of being able to think about things without bias, right? Yep. So it's, we talk a lot, Liz, about what if, right? Like, what if you could do this? Like these crazy ideas, those crazy ideas are actually what become the technology and the better processes and the streamlined workflows that we're all striving for. And if you never ask the question because you've already made the decision that whatever it is isn't possible, you're basically cutting yourself off at the knees and you're not going to be able to really find the optimal solution. So you do have to go in with a huge open mind and say, what if anything was possible, and land there and then try to solve it, right?
I can't help but think about one of those repeated phrases in my head that I guard myself against. And it's, I never want to say to my kids, oh, that's too loud, because then I suddenly date myself. And I feel like the same thing, like it was a light bulb moment whenever you said, thinking about sometimes archaic processes and that feeling of, I don't want to. It's the same thing. You've got to be able to say, I don't want to say that. I mean, it's a conscious decision. You have to make it to be able to be open to new ideas. So really I'm going to say, as far as open to new ideas, we're going to drink right off the bat.
We're doing it.
Right. Yep. And so I've got mine right here. And the reason that we are taking a drink right off the bat is we need this crisp Corpay cooler with all of this vodka and whiskey, just in case you didn't catch that, both. And who doesn't want caramel? Anyway, we're going to drink this because this is going to be a spot where we want to pass it over to Eric, and he's going to be able to take us through the journey. So Eric, thank you for being here with us. And thank you for getting us intoxicated.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Thank you again for having me. I know it's a busy week for a lot of you guys and the attendees here as well. So really appreciate everyone just taking out some time to learn a little bit more about Corpay One and what we do here. And, I'll take a drink here with you just to get started.
Yum. That's my favorite mug right there.
Yeah, I'm a big Moscow Mule guy, so I keep the tin cups around there.
I love mules.
Yeah.
All right. And so do you have sharing ability? I want to make sure.
I should. So give me 1 second. Let me just share my screen. All right. You guys should be able to see my screen now.
We do. Yay.
Perfect. All right. So again, thank you everyone for joining us today. And thank you, Liz and Heather, for having me in Corpay One on the Happy Hour. So today we're going to take a deep dive, as Liz mentioned, into our workflows. And we titled it, ironically, WTF, What the Flow on Workflows. All right. So we're going to take a deep dive here and really understand all the nooks and crannies about what Corpay One is, but also more specifically, our workflows and what we can do there to help automate a lot of common processes that we see today. So again, my name is Eric Harris Poindexter. I'm an advisor manager here at Corpay One. I'll be your main presenter. However, I also have my colleague Emma along here with us as well. She's going to be kind of manning the chat. So if you guys have any questions, please feel free, or even just comments, please feel free to throw those in the chat. we're more than happy to interact with you. And we want this to be as interactive as possible. It's one thing I made sure to make a point with Liz is we want you guys to interact, ask questions, and really enjoy this time that we have here together. So first, we're going to start off with just a high-level overview of what Corpay One is. And Corpay One for accountants is an all-in-one spend management platform with a focus primarily on bill pay. All right. So some of the key features that accountants love and leverage within our platform is obviously the ability to create customized document workflows and approval processes, but also the ability to capture documents digitally and extract the data from them automatically. And lastly, we also have the ability to automatically sync all this information with your accounting softwares like QBO and Xero. So who are we? All right, Corpay One is a fairly new name into the space. However, our company actually has been around for about 5 or 6 years now. We used to be known as Roger AI, and we were acquired by our now parent company, FleetCor. Right, so we've been Corpay One for about 2 years now, and our parent company, FleetCor, is actually a global leader in B2B payments, with 3.2 billion in revenue. Over 9,000 employees, a part of the S&P 500, and also MasterCard's largest commercial issuer of MasterCard payments there. So how does Corpay One work? Firstly, again, we integrate with your accounting software. So all the information that you or your clients are submitting into our system, we have an automatic two-way sync with systems like QuickBooks Online and Xero. So what does that mean? That means after you upload a document into Corpay One, we're going to extract all that data and then sync it back into your accounting software automatically. Things such as the bill amount, the vendor name, but more importantly, the actual attachment, which is a key differentiator between us and other systems, is we will actually attach the image of that bill of receipt into your accounting system as well. And there are a few other side kind of projects that we're working on here to bring in both our new Corpay One MasterCard transactions and payments that'll be coming soon.
It's
So
nice to see on that last screen that you've got the arrows pointing back and forth, because this is really, part of the workflow is understanding where do you input the data.
Definitely. And because we have a two-way sync, it actually makes it pretty easy in terms of being flexible with workflows, because essentially clients can either input the bills directly into Corpay One, or they can actually input them directly into QuickBooks, for example, and we'll pull those out of QuickBooks back into our system. So when you're first setting up this account, it actually makes it very easy to kind of keep whatever process you already have and then just implement Corpay One on top of that.
Nice flexibility.
Yeah. So with document capture, we actually give you and your clients 4 different ways to submit information into our system digitally. We allow you to upload a file directly from your computer into the Corpay One system. You can also enter a bill manually, which is essentially creating your own bill in Corpay One. And then you can email a bill in. So every client account that you create in Corpay, you're going to have their own unique Corpay One email address. And with that, you can actually forward any bills that are sent to you or the client to their unique Corpay One email address, and which will capture the documents from there. And then lastly, we also offer a free mobile app. So we have an app that can be downloaded both on the iPhone and the Android. And with this, you can actually take pictures of any physical bills or receipts that you have in hand. It's actually what we use when we go out on trips at conferences and things like that. We actually take pictures of our own expenses for reimbursable purposes. But it's a great app to use as well to manage and approve expenses. So what happens, excuse me, what happens with the bills after we submit them in one of those 4 ways? Everything comes into your one client inbox. All right. So we're going to organize all the data and extract all the key information, bring it into one client inbox for you as the accountant to see and manage. This bill pay screen that we're looking at now is essentially your hub for all things bill pay. All right. This is where you guys would go in, review your bills, categorize them, make any changes that you need to, and ultimately approve them depending on the approval process that we have set previously. So WTF, right? What are these workflow things that we're talking about? We kind of touched on it a bit at a high level. So thank you, Liz, for giving us that kind of overview and breakdown there. But more specifically with Corpay One, as I mentioned earlier, when I think of workflows in our system, it actually goes simultaneously with automation, right? Because that's all our workflows are. Workflows in Corpay One is a sophisticated but yet simple to use custom flow that you can either create a document workflow or approval process for, right? Now, the basic sort of principle that our workflows operate on is a if this, then that concept, right? So some of you may have used other systems in the past, such as a Zapier or other sort of coding systems that have a similar logic, but it essentially operates on the same principle, just with a few different triggers, and obviously more specifically to documents and bill pay inside of Corpay One. So first, we're going to talk about the triggers, right? These are the criteria that you would first set for Corpay One to look out for that would then elicit a certain action, right? So what are some of those key triggers that we tend to see a lot of our users use here? Bill amount is probably the most common one. So for example, hey, if the document is over $1,000, for example, I need that to go through a certain approval process. Another common one is vendor, right? A lot of people have vendors that some are on auto pay, some are paid through different methods, and they need to have two separate workflow processes to manage them effectively. This is another trigger that you can set there. And then lastly, you have the type of document as well. So, hey, maybe we treat bills and receipts differently. Maybe we treat bills differently from our employee reimbursements, for example. But these are all things that you can set up as triggers to then elicit a certain action or workflow. Sorry about that. Next, we have our actions, right? So the so-called then that, right? What do we do after we've recognized these documents that meet the criteria? Some of the common actions that we have here is the most obvious one is require approval, right? So, hey, again, if we see a bill that meets this criteria, I want to require approval from this person, for example. Another one that comes up is the ability to disable automatic schedule. So in Corpay One, we can actually automatically schedule payments for you after they've been approved. However, you can also disable auto schedule for certain vendors or for certain types of payments if you would like. And then lastly, you can also mark bills as paid automatically. So common use case there is just if you have, let's say your utility bills or things that are on auto pay, for example, you can still bring them through Corpay One, but have our system actually automatically mark them as paid. So that you guys don't have to action that manually yourselves.
Well, and I really like that you took the time to break apart the if this, then that. And you've got, and you know, like for some that are Zapier users are going to be like, oh, I know these terms, this is going to feel familiar. But then there's others out there that, you know, it really is, if you're thinking about automation, how do you get to the next phase of the automation? Well, there has to be an if then statement followed by the action. So this is a really nice breakdown for thinking about how do you set off that domino effect with the automation.
Yeah, definitely. And this is just kind of the tip of the iceberg, as you guys will see here in a second. There's actually a lot more that we can do from a trigger and action perspective, but these are just some of the more common ones that we tend to see the most so far.
Nice.
Yeah. So now we're going to go live into the product. All right. We're actually going to go into the Corpay One account. We're going to build out a couple of workflows here, but I'm also going to challenge our attendees here to actually help us out in this section. So if you guys can do us a favor, go into the chat. And if there's any either workflow or approval processes that you guys either use today, or if you just want to challenge us and see what Corpay One is capable of, definitely throw those examples in the chat. My colleague Emma is going to catch those, and then we're going to try to build some of these workflows live with you guys so we all get a good experience here.
And I love how brave you are, Eric.
Yes, yes.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so now you guys should be able to see my Corpay One screen, and you should see my workflow builder. All right. So again, on the left-hand side here, the first thing you notice is our triggers and our actions. All right. And again, it gives us that same principle of, hey, when this happens, then we want the system to do this. So I'll go first, and I'm going to start off with just a common sort of bill approval process that we tend to see. And then I'm going to refer back to the chat and our attendees here to see what other examples we may be able to put together here. So the first example we're going to build here is a very basic just bill approval process, which is, let's say we have a scenario where you're working with a client and the client says, hey, Eric, I would like for me to just submit all my bills to you. You can approve them and then pay them, as you're ready. All right. So we're going to put in a bill approval process to basically say, hey, if client submits a bill, have that go to Eric for his approval. Right. So to do that, we're going to first go to our triggers. And the trigger in this case is the type of document. Right. So we're going to say type here. And we're going to say if a document's type is one of the following, is a bill in this scenario. Right. So if a document's type is a bill, then the action that I want the system to then take is I want to require approval. All right. Now, here I also get a few different options. Now, nobody essentially means auto approval, so I wouldn't use that in this case. But any actually allows me to select a specific person. All allows me to select a group of people, and at least allows me to say I need a minimum set of people to approve these type of expenses. For now, since we're just doing a simple single approval, I'll say any. We can say any department, anyone in a particular role, or any coworker. So I'm going to say coworker. And again, I'm going to select myself in this case. So again, just to recap, any bill that is submitted through the system must be approved by Eric. Right. So that one's like pretty simple, pretty straightforward. Now, what we tend to see more commonly is that after, let's say I start working with this client, and as we get into it, they say, hey, Eric, you can approve most things, but there are certain bills that I need to look at as well before those go out, right? We need sort of this multi-level approval. So let's say the client says, hey, Eric, you can approve all bills maybe less than $10,000. If it's above $10,000, I need to be aware of that so that I can manage the cash flow. I can make sure, that the bill is legit, et cetera. So, okay, we have to go back and we have to build on this current workflow, right? This one here is too simple. So we would need to create a separate workflow for the bill amount specifically, right? So in this case, we would go back to our triggers and we would add in the bill amount as another qualifying trigger. And we'd say if the document's bill amount is greater than $10,000, or as you guys are accountants, I know you're particular with numbers, so we'll probably go with like 9999. So if it's greater than $10,000 here, we not only want Eric to approve it, in this case, we also have to get my client to approve. So now we hit the little plus sign here and we add another layer of approval. All right. And this is where we would go in and add in the client for his approval. And let's say Ben was my client, for example. So in this scenario, again, when Corpay One sees a bill that has a bill amount greater than $10,000, it'll go to me first for my approval, but only after I approve it, will it then go to Ben for his final approval.
And I want to call out here, we're just talking about the bill approval. We haven't moved past that. So there's lots of options here for being able to say, if you're a company who requires multi levels of approvals for bills, or even before you progress to the next phase, which I think is always a safety net. If you're somebody who's an outsourced AP processor, I always want my clients to be the one who approves that bill before we ever move to the payment phase. Because what if they didn't receive those goods or services?
Yep. That's a really good point there. Absolutely. And Heather, I know, from working with you and some of your clients there as well, we've kind of built out some of these, but yeah, this here is kind of the the basic sort of initial sort of workflow that I wanted to just show everyone and get that initial understanding here. But now I actually want to go to the chat and see what examples we have there before we continue. So I think my colleague Emma has been fielding a few messages here, and Sandy says she was interested in learning more around multi-level approvals where the approver varies depending on the type of expense, right? So that goes back to, again, the type of document that we have. So in this case, Sandy, what we would do is we would essentially just create separate workflows for each type of document that we need, right? So we would say, hey, if a document's type is a bill, then we want this approval process, but then we create another workflow to say, hey, if a document is a receipt, we want a separate approval workflow process. And you can create multi-levels depending on whether it just be the document type, or if you want to add in additional qualifiers such as amounts, vendor names, etc. And then Vicky asks, when one employee enters expenses from reimbursements, then employee 2 needs to review and approve the expense before payment. So in that case, again, we can go with reimbursable expenses. So we're going to say if the document type is one of the following and is a expense report, for example. So if the document is an expense report and that document is submitted by a particular coworker, all right? So, hey, if it's an expense report submitted by one of the following, let's say by John, for example, if that document is submitted by John, then we have to make sure it then requires approval, right? And in this case, ideally we would have, maybe John's manager, for example, but you would just go ahead and set that person up here. And again, if we needed multi-levels of approval, you would just hit the additional plus sign here and add in that additional layer for that particular scenario.
Well, and let me go back to Sandy's question, because she's saying that she's looking for different types of bills like landscape versus office supplies. So I'm almost wondering, and Sandy, you may want to clarify, maybe different departments. So are we able to capture departments here?
Yes. So couple things that we can do in those sort of scenarios. So with Corpay One, the most detailed sort of trigger that we have is this keyword ability. So keyword is actually very powerful because it actually analyzes the entire document for a particular keyword. All right. So the first thing is, in this case, the document would need to have some sort of identifier on it for us to be able to, identify this so-called category. But if it does have that, we can then create a keyword and we can say, hey, if a document has a keyword that contains this or is exactly this phrase, for example, let's say it said landscaping or office supplies, like directly on the document, you can actually have it search for that keyword on the document and then trigger a certain categorization or a certain approval process based off of that keyword. Or you can also do this based off of the vendor. So a lot of times we find that vendors themselves tend to be categorized the same. So you can actually just base it off of the vendor overall and just say, hey, if we get a bill from this particular vendor, then automatically, categorize it this way or automatically put it through this sort of approval process.
So I liked the keywords because that allows for a lot of flexibility. And then I'm wondering, in Sandy's scenario, if the vendor would be maybe the best option, because if it's landscaping, chances are it's going to be the same landscaper that's going to come back repeatedly.
There's a couple of things, right? So that's kind of like the first level of workflow and approval, but then there's a second sort of layer of workflow and approval here, which is based around the actions that you take once the document is inside of Corpay One. So what I mean by that is you can trigger a certain workflow after someone, let's say, categorizes a document a particular way. So what we would do in that case is coworker activity. And you can basically say, hey, if someone categorizes the document to one of these categories, then make sure it goes to this person for their approval.
So a lot of flexibility whenever we're talking about category.
Yeah, yeah,
So,
because basically there's one front end sort of workflow action that it triggers based off of whatever details are present on the bill when it's submitted. But then there are other ones like coworker activity that is triggered after the bill is submitted, and it's based around what that user actually does on the document. So if they tag it to a particular category, make sure it goes here. Or if they tag it to a certain department, make sure it goes to that department's manager, for example, are all things that we can also trigger off of.
this also makes me think of, science experiments have testing. So what if you wanted to test a scenario?
Yeah, so that's a great idea, actually. So when you put together a workflow, let me see if I can build one out really quick. Let's see here. All right, so after you build the workflow, a couple things you can do to test it, right? The first thing is you have the settings on the right-hand side. You have a validation, right? So the validation is basically what will double check your workflow to make sure that it's not causing any issues, right? It's not conflicting with any other prior workflows. There's nothing missing or anything like that. So if there are any errors, you'll first get a validation message. Once you notice that there are no errors here and you want to actually go ahead and test this workflow, you can see at the very bottom, it's kind of grayed out here, but we can actually test and review workflows. So what that does is before I actually put that workflow into place, it's going to scan my current inbox for documents that actually meet that criteria. And it's going to make that basically will make sure that it's working in the way that I intended it to, before I actually go ahead and save and activate it, right? So this test and review button is basically the ability to kind of preview what that workflow would look like and what documents would have been triggered into that workflow if it was in place prior to that point.
Nice. So you get a chance to test.
Yeah, no, that's a great point there. You can test. You can also like pause workflows as well. So if you want to pause it for a second to test something out or kind of do troubleshooting or different things like that, you can also pause and activate them if you need to.
Well, and what about pausing for vacations? Like if there was somebody who's typically the approver, but we know that they are going to take Fridays off. So is there a way to pause that Monday through Thursday, but then on Fridays make sure that it skips that person?
Not necessarily to that degree. However, we do have the ability, we have settings in different terms of roles and access that you have that will allow someone to essentially manually go in and override the approver if they need to. So let's say I'm the owner of the accounting firm and I realize one of my bookkeepers is out this week. I can actually go in and see that and then move it to another one of my bookkeepers in that case. However, it's not set up in a way where I can sort of like automatically schedule it to do that on a certain day. It's more so either I would need to manually do that, or I can create a workflow that would basically allow for not just that one individual, but her and her colleagues to approve.
Multiple people.
Yeah.
Well, I keep trying to like throw some curveballs at you. So
Yeah.
Vicky, she's got a scenario and she's saying when employee 1 enters expenses from reimbursement, then employee 2 needs to review, approve, then board needs to approve before payment.
Yeah. So in that case, again, we would, if we're going off of, if the employee 1 enters expenses, so we're going off of who the trigger in this case is who entered it, right? So we go off of the system variables and upload it by coworker. So, hey, if a document is uploaded by coworker, let's just say John is employee 1 in this example. If it's uploaded by John, then I want that to then go to Eric. Let's say I'm employee 2 in this example for my approval. All right. And she also mentioned then the board needs to approve it after that for payment. So it goes to me for my initial approval. After I approve it, we then hit the little plus sign and we add in another level of approval. So it'll go from me up to the board members in this case, and let's just say, for example, that, John and Tanya were my board members. So the difference between having two people in one level or in separate levels here, in this one, either John or Tanya can approve this document. When it's separated out in two levels, that means that this person has to approve before it gets to the next level. All right. So if I wanted, let's say, for example, again, John is my board member. If I set it up like this, that means if me or John approve it, it's going to be fully approved, right? But we don't want that. We want it to go from me and then to John for his final approval. And that's why we set up these sort of multi-levels, and we add in John and what other board members to that second level. But the good thing is, with this, there's no limitation to this. So if there are 3 levels, 4 levels, 5 levels, however many levels of approval you need, you can have that. And unlike other systems, Corpay One doesn't charge based around users or the amount of approvers that you need, right? So a lot of times we see limitations with workflows that are not being created due to cost, and that being a barrier of maybe not having everyone being set up there. But we can also navigate through that as well with Corpay One.
Well, so you answered one of Heather's questions, and then Heather, you asked another question.
I did. So yeah, and I think you've already answered that one too. So it was, what if I have a vendor, like, for example, what I'm throwing out here is like the electric company, right? A lot of our clients, they have separate accounts for different parts of the organization that come from the same vendor. So my question was, and I think you answered this with the keyword answer was, if I have 5 accounts at Verizon and I need them to be approved by 5 different people, is that something that you could handle?
Yeah, I set that up actually for an advisor a couple months ago, where it's literally exact same situation, multi-office location, one utility bill with the only difference in them was the account numbers. And what we did is we set up a workflow for the keyword to recognize the account numbers and basically route them accordingly to the correct individuals.
Perfect. That's huge.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think Sandy, she asked the question around where does the bill get coded? We actually code the bill inside of Corpay One, or you would code the bill inside of Corpay One, and then that would actually sync over into QuickBooks Online automatically.
And we covered that piece of the Corpay in the episode that we did back in July. So if you want to see how the flexibility, because there's a lot of flexibility when the bill actually comes into Corpay One, the way that you can, code it, and the OCR is actually really robust. So it reads a whole lot more than most of the other solutions that we see.
Yeah, definitely. OCR is 99.8% accurate. So we rarely see any issues there.
Well, I see one more question here, and it's from Don, and he's asking, when pulling invoices, bills from QBO, are the images also attached?
Yes, that is the golden question. So both ways, actually. So if you upload a bill into Corpay One, we sync over the image into QuickBooks. So you'll have it both in Corpay and in QuickBooks as an attachment, and also vice versa. If you happen to upload a bill directly into QuickBooks, we'll pull that back into Corpay with the original image and all the details as well. But that's one of the key differentiators we find between us and other systems that are out there.
And then I think that Becky is throwing out one more scenario, and I think we have time for this one. And then I want to make sure that we get the poll launched.
So I think Becky said, well, what if a client sends a receipt to Corpay One's bill email? Can Corpay One archive or ignore any docs that are not bills? Yes, so we can archive them. We actually have 2 separate emails for bills and for receipts. However, if for whatever reason you had the incorrect document submitted, we can archive those into a separate section for you.
Nice. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and launch the poll because I think that there's interest here, and I want to make sure everybody has a chance to answer it. So would you like to learn more about Corpay? And if yes, then we will pass along your information. And if no, then we won't share your information. So be sure to answer the poll. And I see a couple here saying that they already use Corpay.
Yeah, which is
So
awesome.
that's really cool.
Yep.
And I dropped the link for the July episode in the chat. So if those of you that want to dig into some of the other features in Corpay One that we covered back in July, you just click that link and then bookmark it or watch it now.
Yes. Yeah. No, that's awesome. And yeah, we're here, me, Emma, and the advisor team, more than happy to answer any more specific questions, set up sort of individual consultations with any of you guys as well to go through your particular scenarios and questions. But just to reiterate, we went through Corpay One as a whole, and more specifically with our workflow processes there. But one of the best parts about Corpay One is that you get all this at a relatively free price here. All right. So our platform is very unique compared to others in the sense that for software, we don't charge your typical sort of monthly subscription fees. All right. So no monthly user fees around basic usage or document scanning, syncing to QuickBooks, even our payments. We actually send out free check and ACH payments for you and your client, right? So that's completely free as long as they're funded through your bank account. The only things that Corpay One charges for today is a few add-on sort of select features, right? The ability to send an international wire payment for $9.50. Or if you want to fund a bill with your credit card instead of your bank account, we charge a 2.9% fee. But our overall model is to provide a free platform with these sort of optional add-ons that you guys can elect to use for a fee. And we'll continue to add in additional features like that, such as foreign exchange payments, next day ACHs, and more features that are coming down the pipeline soon here.
Nice.
You know,
Okay,
Eric,
well,
this
I'm
is-
gonna do the countdown, and then Heather, pass it over to you. So
Thank you.
I think that everybody who's voted, I'm gonna give you 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1 for those who had not had a chance. Okay.
I was just going to say that I feel like Corpay is such an amazing solution. I mean, for any business, for literally any business out there, but especially for our not-for-profit clients, because it's cost effective, right? It gives them the internal controls that they desperately need, right? And that other solutions are kind of expensive for them to get that benefit.
Yes.
I just feel like you guys really, really created something that is going to really help that whole sector immensely.
Yeah, we have a whole kind of segment dedicated to nonprofits in particular. We've created some content around that, and even like a webinar for that in particular, because we've seen some great success. One of our best firms here with us is actually specifically a nonprofit bookkeeping firm. So he works specifically with them, and he loves it for the exact reasons you mentioned, right? They need the controls, but they also have the restraints around the finances. And a lot of times, accounting software isn't built into the budget, right? So Corpay One is very easily able to be implemented as long as you just have the time. And to Liz's point, you have that open mind to, changing. So.
Absolutely.
Well, I want to make sure that everybody knows a couple of these other key areas, and I think that we are at time. Is that true?
Yeah.
Okay, we got 2
we got
minutes.
a couple
So
minutes.
what I'm going to do is I'm going to share screen so that way we can make sure to get through these, because everyone will have access to these slides, but you had supplied a couple of pieces of good information here. How does Corpay make money? I think that that's a really good question to answer. And I think I skipped through. Hold on. There was one slide in particular that I wanted to make sure to call out. Okay. And then can I set up my client's bank account if I have the information? And so I like some of these answers here. The other one that I think that is worth stopping and talking about for just a second is the MasterCard. So do you want to explain this slide for just a second?
Yeah, absolutely. So Corpay One again is a all-in-one spend management platform. So even though we kind of started and have a focus on bill pay, our overall goal is to be able to offer this kind of all-in-one solution for you and your clients to manage not just bill pay, but also your receipts, your credit cards, and transactions as well. So as a part of that, we actually introduced our Corpay One MasterCard, which is a business credit card that you or your clients can apply for individually for their respective businesses. And essentially, this card would be integrated into our Corpay One platform, where you can see the transactions, set controls, order additional cards there. But some of the key benefits are obviously you're able to build business credit over time, the longer you keep it in good standing. But we actually have a pretty good term in terms of your payback ability, right? We actually give you up to 51 days to pay back your purchases. So a nice bit of float there. And we actually give you a good decent amount of cash back with this card. So you get 1% cash back on all purchases or up to 1.5% cash back if you happen to use that for bill pay at all within Corpay One.
Nice, nice. Okay, well, I appreciate you sharing that last little bit.
Yeah.
And I'm not surprised that we are at time. There was so much here, and Eric, bravo. You took
Thank you.
all of
Thank
the
you.
questions and fielded them so well.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that.
That was amazing. Like you killed it. So
Uh-huh.
that's
And
hard to be
calm,
live.
super calm. Yep. So that was pretty, I mean, it was fascinating to watch. All of us here were like, ooh.
Nice, nice,
And I
nice.
have to say thank you to the audience too for asking some really good scenarios.
They were great. They were great. Me and my colleague were a bit hesitant. We weren't sure how engaged they would be, but they were great. So really appreciate you guys giving us those examples and really just engaging here with us tonight.
Totally. And I would even say if you didn't respond to the poll, but you're like, wait, I want a chance to have a reach out, go ahead and throw your email address in chat and we'll capture that too. But in the meantime, I'll go ahead and start to wrap us up by saying, if you want to learn more about prior episodes, I encourage you to go over to our website. And then from there, you can even go follow our link over to YouTube where all of our recordings are. We also on our website have all of our drink recipes and links to the apps so you can have more information there as well. And then don't forget about our Facebook group. We have lots of conversations that are happening inside of Facebook, so anybody can join those. And then I will say we had Appy Camp, so this this cracks me up. We have some episodes that are coming up that we have ADP, and then we will be having QuickBooks Connect. But as you can tell, we had a lot of focus that was on our Appy Camp. So we are getting back to it.
We do. And we're going to be having our Appy Hour campfire chats starting up really soon. We actually just got the dates finalized today. So that will be up on our website within the next 24 to 48 hours. So you'll start to see those rolling out as well. And also, I would just say, if there's any apps out there that you guys want to see on Appy Hour, let us know. Send Liz and I an email. Send it. You can reach out to us on our website. But we want to hear from you guys. So we're here for you. So definitely use your voice and we'll do our best.
Absolutely. Yep. And it's always fun to hear from our audience, like, what is it that you're wanting to see? And workflow seems to always be a great topic. Mm-hmm. So Eric, that was fantastic today. And we want to say thank you to Corpay for making this episode possible.
Yeah, thank you guys as well. Like I said, I really appreciate it and just looking forward to doing some more great work with you guys.
Well, thank you for joining us. See everyone soon.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Have a good one, guys.
Bye.